Well, it certainly seems that this missing pet case has turned out to be more than you bargained for, Doctor.
Yes, indeed it was. I was quite shocked when Holmes and I followed that cat to a dead body. It was definitely more exciting than I had expected.
Yes, and now I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you an exciting story of my own. It's the story of a company that got some great advertising at a low price by sponsoring a new show when it was just starting out.
Well, that does sound exciting.
Yes, but unfortunately this company has not yet come forward as a sponsor of the Watson Files, and therefore is missing out on the endorsement we could be giving them right now.
Well, that's a shame. How would such a company go about taking advantage of this opportunity?
They simply need to visit thewatsonfiles.com and click on the sponsor link.
That sounds easy enough.
Yes, it's quite simple. But now, let's get back to the case of the missing cat. Mrs. Jansen's absent cat has just led you into the woods, where you found a dead woman.
Yes, precisely. I returned Perkins to Mrs. Jansen while Holmes remained with the body and alerted the police. Officer Weathers arrived on scene just as I was returning, and the unfortunate woman was identified as the daughter of Governor Smith, who lives in a large house across the park. As we began our assessment of...
Dr. Watson?
Yes, Officer Weathers?
Could you give us a preliminary assessment of the body?
Yes, of course, officer. Well, the medical examiner will have to confirm, but I believe the cause of death is most likely blunt force trauma to the head. More precisely, the top of her head.
Yes, my assessment as well. And would you say the time of death was around midnight?
Yes, give or take a couple of hours. That seems about right.
Doesn't look like there's any sign of sexual assault.
Ah, yes, good observation, officer. So you assume that the motive was more personal, then?
That's what I'm thinking. And I know someone who recently had a fight with the girl.
That's right. I knew I'd seen her somewhere recently. It was on the news just last night. She got in quite the shouting match with her father up at the university. Her roommate recorded it on a cell phone and released it to the media.
Making him our #1 suspect.
Now, Officer Weathers, let's not get too hasty here. I happen to know Governor Smith quite well, and I can assure you he is not involved in this death.
Well, I don't mean to say he killed her himself, but he could have had it done. I think we should at least go talk to him.
I can't see any harm in talking, Holmes. We need to notify him of his daughter's death in any event. Holmes? What are you doing? Are you sniffing the body?
Mr. Holmes, I don't know what you plan to gain from smelling a dead body.
When my other senses fail to produce any evidence, I try other methods of discovery.
And what have you discovered?
I believe this was nothing more than a simple accident.
Well, I hardly see how that's possible. What, did a squirrel throw an acorn at her?
No, not a squirrel, but I don't think you're far off. Let's go talk to the governor.
All right, finally a plan I can agree with.
Holmes, do you know how this poor woman died?
We will see, won't we?
Governor Smith, I'm afraid we've got some bad news.
Yes?
Holmes, perhaps you should tell him.
Your daughter is dead, sir.
What? No! This can't be. How did it happen?
We found her in the woods across the park.
I told her it wasn't safe to walk out there at night.
Did she often take walks in the park?
Yes, nearly every night.
Didn't you recently have a fight with her?
Well, yes, but that's not unusual for a father and daughter. Surely you don't think I had anything to do with this?
We're not ruling anyone out yet. I'm afraid we might have to bring you in, sir.
But I have a press conference in an hour about the new budget proposal.
Officer, can't you wait until after the press conference? If the press finds out he's a suspect, they'll slaughter him, whether he's guilty or not.
I'm sorry, but I don't think we can do that.
Governor, have you noticed airplanes flying low over the park by chance?
Yes, the park is below a landing zone, I think. Why?
I believe I can prove that your daughter's death was simply an accident.
I hardly see how that's possible.
Just give me an hour. You can stay here with the governor. That will give you time to get to the press conference, right?
Yes, I suppose.
All right then, come, Watson. We have no time to lose.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How can I help you?
My name is Spencer Holmes, and this is my associate, Dr. Watson. We're consulting with the police department on a case, and we need to see your repair records for flights that landed between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. last night.
You'll need to speak with our head mechanic, Jason. I'll go get him.
I say, Holmes, what on earth could this airport have to do with her death? You don't think she fell from an airplane, do you? Because I'm quite certain she would have much more extensive injuries if that were the case.
No, of course not, Watson.
Well, then I just can't see what you're driving at here.
Yes, what can I do for you?
Are you Jason, the head mechanic?
Yes, I am.
I'd like to see your repair records for flights that landed between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. last night.
No.
I beg your pardon?
You can't just come in here and demand to see our records.
Why? Do you have something to hide?
Of course not. It's just policy.
Policy indeed.
Well, could you at least tell me if you had any planes land last night with leaks?
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, we did. It was just a small leak, but how'd you know that?
Aha! Watson, we must get back to Officer Weathers immediately. There's not a moment to lose. Thank you for your help, Jason. Officer Weathers, good, you're still here.
Yes, I was just checking out the governor's garden over here. I sure hope you found something, Holmes, because he's anxious to get to that press conference.
Oh, indeed we have.
So, you have your proof then, do you?
No, but I know where it is. If you head out to the airport and speak with the head mechanic, a young man named Jason, you'll find that an airplane landed last night that had a leaky waste storage tank. If you inspect the body and surrounding soil thoroughly, I feel quite certain that you'll find traces of antifreeze, one of the main chemicals in the fluid used in the lavatory on an aircraft.
An aircraft lavatory? Do you mean...
Yes, the leaking fluid froze on the side of the plane at high altitude. Then, as the plane came into land, the warming air released a hunk of blue ice, and it plummeted to the earth, landing on poor Miss Smith's head.
I must say that's quite the story.
Oh, it's quite more than a story. If you'll check the evidence I've suggested, it will all be confirmed.
Don't worry, sir. I'll do just that.
Well, then we shall say good day, if you don't require any more assistance.
Looks like Mrs. Smith's death has made the front page, and the evidence is all laid out here, just as you predicted.
Yes, the airline is in some hot water now.
As opposed to the cold water Miss Smith was in.
Yes, quite true.
But I still don't understand how you figured out the cause of her death.
Well, it's just a matter of simple deduction, really. The blow was to the top of her head, which would seem to indicate something fell on her. If someone had hit her, it would have been to the backside of her head. As the object was not present, it can be assumed that it either had been removed by someone, or it had disappeared through other means, such as melting. There are not many things that are heavy enough to kill a person that fall from trees, so clearly the object came from higher up. A quick sniff of the body produced the smell of a deodorant and antifreeze. I could also smell her perfume, and therefore knew the deodorant smell was not likely from her. So the only thing I could think of that melts and smells of deodorant and antifreeze is blue ice from a passing airplane.
Yes, excellent. I never would have seen it. It seems the most unusual way for a person to die, don't you think?
Yes, clearly this case was one of a kind.
Dr. Watson, that story is incredible. I thought a cat leading you to a dead body was unexpected, but death by falling toilet water from an airplane? I have to say, I didn't see that one coming.
And neither did she. It seems that what started off as one of the most boring cases we've had yet turned out to be the most interesting.
So, what new adventure are you going to tell us about next week?
Next week I'm going to tell you a curious story about an apparent suicide in a room that was locked from the inside. However, as usual, things turned out to be not quite what they seemed.
Sounds intriguing, Doctor. I look forward to hearing that one next week. Tonight's Watson Files adventure was written by Scott Strosall. Spencer Holmes and Dr. Watson were played by Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger. Additional voices were performed by Steve Rampici. This is Craig Dowland saying good night from Strobe Studios.